This story is about a daughter-in-law who insulted her mother-in-law by calling her a dirty woman and cut off relations. What could have happened? Let's find out together. Please subscribe and like our channel.
Hello. I'm a woman who has been married for 4 years and is pregnant with a son. I work at a large corporation and my husband works at a medium-sized company. And our salaries are similar, excluding things like bonuses. When we got married, we took out a lease loan to set up our newly home, and are repaying the loan, but we are not financially tight. I recently cut off my relationship with my mother-in-law, and it's been bothering me. I inadvertently cursed at my mother-in-law during a conversation. My husband is also considering giving up his obligation to support his mother, which must have hurt him as a son. I said a lot of harsh words to my mother-in-law to cut ties clearly. I hope you can take a look at this. There are several reasons why I cut off ties with my mother-in-law. Most problems between people are about money. The biggest reason I cut off ties with my mother-in-law was money. My mother-in-law has always been in debt due to her lack of economic concept since my husband was young. My father-in-law was not a low-income person. My parents-in-law often fought and divorced as soon as my husband became an adult. I understand that when my parents-in-law divorced, my father-in-law took on all the debt. My mother-in-law also had several men issues. My father-in-law must have been very stressed because his wife kept saying that she was short of living expenses, even though he earned a generous amount of money. On top of that, his wife kept causing men issues, and it must have been really hard for my father-in-law. My mother-in-law always said that she couldn't stand it and divorced. But the one who really endured was my father. My husband had no choice but to study in a money-making direction, because he grew up experiencing poverty from a young age. It was pitiful that my husband, who did not hesitate to spend money on himself, but was reluctant to spend money on his son's education, grew up under a mother. It seems that my husband's quiet personality and cautious attitude came from growing up in such an environment. I grew up in an ordinary family. I used to be petulant to my husband, but he was good at accepting my petulance. I felt sorry for my husband when I thought that my husband was good at accepting my petulance and irritation because of the environment he grew up in. After dating my husband for about a year and a half, we decided to get married and separately visited my mother-in-law and father-in-law. My father-in-law lived far away and didn't seem to have much interest in his son's marriage, so I felt a little sad at first. However, it turned out that my father-in-law had provided a lot of support to my husband after he divorced my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law was a mother who asked her college son for money. So how would it have been after my husband started working? My father-in-law supported my husband's college tuition and even his allowance. My mother-in-law asked her college son for money every day, saying she was having a hard time, and she must have known that there was money sent by my father-in-law. My innocent husband seems to have been ripped off a lot of money by my mother-in-law, from his college days to before he met me. However, my mother-in-law's demands only grew, and there was no sign of gratitude at all. My husband has one older brother. He's someone who lives life as it comes. My uncle is very proud that he is the eldest son. He's someone who hasn't done anything as the eldest son. I suspect that there was also money that went to my uncle from the money my husband sent to my mother-in-law. When we were newlyweds, my uncle quit his job and lived unemployed for a few months, then asked us for business capital. We didn't even have that kind of money. But even if we did, we couldn't have lent it to my uncle. As soon as my husband heard my uncle's request, he refused and told me about it. He said he was going to open a karaoke room with a friend, but how could we lend him business capital? It's obvious that we wouldn't even be able to get back the principal, let alone the interest on the money we lent. My mother-in-law was extremely angry with us for a while. She said that we were being stingy with each other, even though we were both earning well and couldn't lend that little money to my uncle. She said that we would be punished later. My mother-in-law said something like this: "It would be lucky if you could earn as much as an ordinary office worker by running a karaoke room. But how can I lend money to my brother, who says he's going to partner with a friend?" When my husband said this, my mother-in-law said, "Then you should lend money to your brother, so that he can open a business on his own, not with his friend." I wondered what kind of logic this was. And my mother-in-law made me the bad person. My husband is someone who respects my uncle. But he said that my husband changed after marrying me. My husband was someone who would lend money to my uncle, but I was stopping him. My mother-in-law often said to me and my husband that we were people who didn't even recognize our parents and siblings. I was so angry that I didn't want to see my mother-in-law. But it was a bit harsh to say that to my husband. My husband had a hard time growing up in a difficult family environment from a young age, and struggled as the eldest son. So I didn't want to say anything to him. I trusted my husband to make the right decision. So even after we got married, I didn't say anything about my husband giving my mother-in-law 500,000 won every month. Whenever my husband talked about his mother and his uncle, I just listened and never said a word. I had a feeling there'd be a comment about, how could family members possibly behave like that? I was pregnant last year and let both sides of the family know. My father-in-law, who lives far away, and we only see occasionally, called me to thank me. He told me to always be careful, and then sent me 1 million Korean won. He called again to say he was sorry he couldn't give more, but that he would cover the hospital and postnatal care center costs when I give birth. He said no matter the cost, to book a good hospital and postnatal care center. My mother-in-law and uncle didn't even congratulate us. I guess you won't understand. It seems like my mother-in-law didn't congratulate my pregnancy, because she felt like she would have to give a gift. Unbelievable, right? We had a baby and were about to spend a lot of money. So my husband told his mother that he could no longer give her the money he had been giving her every month. This wasn't my idea, it was my husband's. He felt sorry for giving money to his mother while we were struggling. So he called her and told her that he couldn't give her money anymore. My mother-in-law said that this was not a conversation to have over the phone, and asked him to meet in person. When my husband met her, she cried, screamed, and made a scene. She said that after all her struggles to raise her son, he was acting like he didn't know his poor, old mother. But she's only in her 50s. My husband couldn't say a word in front of her, and just told her that he couldn't give her money anymore. After that day, my mother-in-law kept calling me. She asked how could I let my husband stop giving her money when I knew she was struggling. I told her that was my husband's decision, not mine. But when she asked why I didn't stop him, I had no answer. She kept telling me to persuade my husband. When she said that divine punishment would fall upon our children if we neglected our old parents, I couldn't stand it anymore. She never felt it was a waste to spend money on herself, but felt it was a waste to spend it on her sons. My mother-in-law spent my husband's hard-earned money recklessly and spent her time dating men. If anyone should receive divine punishment, it should be her, not us. Yet, she's the one who's been living off the money her son gives her monthly, doing nothing but actions deserving of divine punishment. She should be content with that. I lost my temper and blurted out these words. But I also did something wrong. When she talked about dating men in the past, I called her a dirty woman who only dates men. I was so angry thinking about how my husband was hurt financially at a young age because of her spending habits. When I told my husband about the phone call, he immediately called his mother. He yelled at her to never call again. He said he was fed up and asked why she was always asking for money when she and his brother were living together. He then hung up. I saw him acting like nothing happened and it hurt me. I was about to cry, but I held back. I thought if I said anything, my husband would break down crying. So, I didn't say anything. A few days later, my husband said I did well by talking back to his mother. He said he was thinking about writing a letter, renouncing his obligation to support his mother, and suggested we should occasionally visit his father who lives far away. It broke my heart to see my husband saying these things. I thought maybe I should have just let my husband cut ties with his mother on his own. I think I was too angry because I felt sorry for my husband and said harsh words to my mother-in-law. I'm curious about what others think, so I'm writing this.
The entire family lived making sacrifices for the happiness of one mother-in-law. Perhaps the mother-in-law has no excuse, even if she hears harsher insults from her daughter-in-law.